Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt, and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. I am really excited to welcome our next podcast guests to the show today, and it is Zack Schreier and Vincent Gudenus. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Julia. Glad to be here. Thanks, Julia. Thank you for having us.
Really excited. For those of you listening, we're actually recording this a second time. Sometimes we have technical issues recording the Stress Podcast, and we already tried recording this wonderful podcast episode on Wednesday. But my electricity went out and so we lost 45 minutes of recording, but that's the beauty of podcasting. And so I've learned already so much about Zack and Vincent in the first recording that we did 2 days ago. And I'm really excited now to actually record it and share it with you. Before we're jumping into all the things today, I am curious to hear from both of you 3 simple questions. Number 1, what time is it? Where are you located? And what have you been up to this morning?
Sure. So it's 1:39 p.m. Central Time. We're here in Chicago, Illinois, which is where I grew up. And Vincent has been staying here at my childhood home, and we're working on a business from here. And today's been a pretty good day. We had some proofs approved on some sample packs. We've got good news about an upcoming production run. So we've been sort of taking care of logistical matters for the business.
And as for myself, I guess the time location is the same as Zach's. Got a little bit of work done this morning, and usually start my day with a walk outside also. So this morning is a beautiful, clear, sunny, but very cold day in Chicago, and so I enjoyed the morning walk. And now really excited to be here with you, Julia.
Great. Thank you so much. Zack, how about you? Do you have a specific routine in the morning before you start your workday?
I'd like to walk also in the morning. I got outside for a little bit. Using the sunlight to kind of set the circadian rhythm and have daytime when it's daytime and set the sleep schedule so that you're ready to go to sleep at some point at night. It's a good tactic. I like to do that when we get the chance and when it's nice out. Otherwise, sometimes we use some breath work. We like a little Wim Hof routine. That's a nice way to kind of get alert but calm early in the morning. And then, of course, we, as we'll get into, we like to start with a cup of coffee and the right supplement stack.
Very cool. Yeah. Tell us more about who you are and what you've been up to over the last couple of years.
Sure thing. So Vincent and I met together in college. We went to Williams College in Massachusetts and really hit it off there. We both had our own health backgrounds and fairly interesting journeys up to that point in life. And so we talked about all things health and habits and even psychedelics and things like that. Before college, I actually in 6th grade I was diagnosed with diabetes. And so that really is what catalyzed my own consideration of health. And then I'm also a long distance runner. And, obviously that's a domain where you get measurable results and the things you do make an impact on those results. And so if you bring a framework of sort of optimizing it and really understanding how to optimize your body for that sport, that sort of understanding pays off. I guess that was an early lesson in homeostasis and adaptation that I've taken with me to other areas of life too.
Very fascinating. And you, Vincent?
Yeah, so I grew up in Austria. That's where I'm originally from. And before meeting Zach at college in the US, I lived a few different places already. So I spent time in Asia and then in America also. And so became interested in all the different food cultures that I was exposed to. And also became interested in this question of, what is a fasting or what is a health and nutrition fad versus what is actually compatible with our evolutionary past. And then became interested in things like fasting but also sort of foundational supplementation. And those were all topics that matched really well with Zack when we got to college together, and so we hit it off, and now we're working on this company together.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting for me, you shared in the last time we tried to record this podcast, but I'm going to just share it here. You shared the first time we talked that Zack is 24, I believe, and Vincent is 27. And it's really fascinating for me that really in your really early years, you already really think about nutrition and health and breath work and fasting. I'm like, when I was 24 years old, I don't know. I think I was in a very different space. And I think also the world was probably still in a very different space, right? And we maybe weren't as aware yet of all of these amazing health benefits that supplementation and breath work and exercise and going outside to like kick off the circadian rhythm, right? Like all of these things were still not so commonly talked about. Do you remember how you got exposed to that? I mean, Zack, obviously with being diagnosed with diabetes, I'm sure very early on in your life, you had to just deal with it, right? But any other thoughts on that?
One thing comes to mind, which is I definitely agree that I think many people are getting like clued into some of these interventions and aspects of health earlier. It looks like there's a much more public focus on this stuff now. All these health podcasts that like yours that really cover the sort of range of different techniques and interventions for managing one's physiology and psychology. I think maybe part of this is that we only over the last few generations have been fairly uprooted. So we're not really inheriting food cultures. We're not really inheriting spiritual cultures. We're kind of in a, like this thing has been pretty blown open for companies to market, bad food to us. And so there is this sort of accumulating crisis of a lack of ability to, have a healthy physiology. So maybe part of this is a sort of collective response. We're accumulating the knowledge that we need to actually counter some of these recent trends.
Vincent, what was your experience like in Austria when you were growing up there?
Yeah, well, I think probably the most formative aspect of this for me is that I actually spent a good amount of time away from home from a fairly early age. So I went abroad for the first time when I was 15 years old, and then again at age 17 and so on. And I think what that instilled in me is a fairly independent streak in general, but also when it comes to my own health, I had to, obviously I always had great support systems around me, but I certainly thought that it was necessary for me to take charge of my own health in a really active way, given that, I'm away from home, etc. So that's when I, started learning and reading more about health and had a sense of taking things in my own hands, given the knowledge that I had available to me. And I guess one thing to emphasize here is also, it is as Zack said, a really exciting time. And as you said also, Julia, it's a really exciting time in sort of the health and fitness space. And consider myself really grateful and lucky also to benefit from a lot of high level, sort of public intellectuals and educators who've done great work in disseminating, cutting edge knowledge. So people like Andrew Huberman or David Sinclair, I think, have done a tremendous service to, the broader world in disseminating ideas that are, genuinely helpful and really timely also.
Yeah, totally. I always think, when I tell people that I'm from Germany, they're always like, oh my God, the food there is so much better. So maybe it was also maybe that upbringing, right, of being exposed to really healthy food and never really having to think about healthy food options, and then starting to travel to other places and just being exposed to other different types of cultures and foods and options. Yeah. All right. Tell us more about your company. Very excited to share that.
Sure thing. So starting in college, Vincent and I had this insight that different things that we might consume have an impact on our daily performance and long-term health. In many cases, those things that impact daily performance positively end up being something that you have to pay for later. And so we can all think of things that we might drink or consume that that feel good, but they have to they have to be taken in the broader context of what they actually cost you physiologically. So, I guess just to point to a few things, a lot of the different sort of drugs or things of that sort are playing with neurotransmitter systems. So for example, alcohol and GABA, or Adderall and dopamine, or pot and the cannabinoid system. And in these cases, basically, we are hijacking the ability of our physiology to support this range of states, but then it bounces back. So we're set up for homeostasis, and so anytime we push ourselves into a higher energy zone, or even a more relaxed or subdued zone, the body might rebound in the opposite direction. So Vincent and I were interested in the possibility of exploring this psychological state space, but we wanted to do it in a way that was going to add to long-term health rather than take it away. And so that's really what led us to supplementation. So basically, our first insight was we wanted to create really great supplement stacks that would support performance and health. And then the second insight was that we thought these stacks could be broadly useful for regular consumers, because everybody needs more energy and everybody wants to feel sharp and healthy. But it's not that attractive to source your own capsules and powders and do your own research on this stuff. And so we thought that by infusing supplements into delicious and intuitive food products, we'd be able to affect more people's lives positively in the way that we're interested in.
And when you say you were, obviously starting to experiment with supplements, did you first start to just take supplements yourself without even having the idea to start your own supplement company? Or was it more like, I don't know, a college project that kind of gave you the idea and took you in that direction?
Yeah, we did a good amount of searching around and experimenting ourselves before we thought to bring a product to market. And started with some of the sort of classic higher powered nootropics. So for example, we had enjoyed a little bit of Noopept our freshman year of college. By the way, none of these are recommendations. This is just this is a historical account. We'd also looked into modafinil, which is a wakefulness agent. Actually, the U.S. military uses modafinil for like really long missions. And it's a little gentler than some of the more stimmy drugs that you might have, but still didn't feel very repeatable. And so then we started looking into things that were a little more subtle, a little more gentle, and maybe more cooperative with our physiology. And so that was really a combination of like looking at examine.com and kind of reading through all these different studies pertaining to different ingredients, and then also seeing what other kind of pre-formulated stacks were out there on the market. So things like Alpha Brain and Quality of Mind were inspirations for us in thinking about how we might put together a pre-formulated stack.
Mm-hmm. And when did you start your company?
We started in 2019, but before that, we had an exploratory phase. So it was only after we realized there was really something for us to do here that we incorporated and started to produce products to the market.
Very cool. So you created a supplement-infused foods company called Life Stacks, and you have one brand and one product on the market so far, and obviously working on a couple of beta testing products as well. Tell us about the product that's at the moment on the market.
Sure. Yeah.
And
so
Vincent is showing it is already in the video. Yeah.
So this is our Add to Coffee product. Basically we started by creating a capsule product, and with the ingredients that we loved and wanted to consume ourselves. And so there was really quite an orientation towards longevity as we were formulating this product. We wanted it to feel good and be very repeatable, and also with ingredients that are clinically studied for positive benefits over the long run. And basically what we heard from customers is, this is great. I love it with my coffee. And then we often basically said, okay, but who are you and why are you making a capsule? What is this? How do I know I can trust this pill? But we saw that in other areas of the market, people were infusing, superfoods into products, and there wasn't that same skepticism that applies to a pill or a powder. And so that was sort of what cued us in to think about other formats. And then this pairing of our ingredients with coffee, that basically, again, cued us into to creating a stack that you can actually mix into your coffee that would make for a delicious consumption experience, and a very healthy one, and also one that enhanced focus and energy throughout the day. So this product we're looking at here is an add to coffee. It's MCT based. MCT is a vegan, low carb, ketogenic fat, and it's also creamy and delicious, and so it makes for a really great coffee creamer. And then we've added a stack of nootropics, which pair with caffeine for sustained energy. And so we've just launched this, fully upgraded, delicious product to the market after doing some beta testing pretty extensively, actually, for a previous version of this product.
Wow. And I know that you also made sure that this product matches people that want to fast, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that part?
Yeah, absolutely. So Zack and I, in addition to our interest in supplementation, we obviously are interested in other ways to support our health as well. And so we both are big fans of intermittent fasting and fasting broadly as a way to improve metabolic health and also long-term health. And so, we want to bring products to market that are broadly supportive of this fasting lifestyle. We don't want to break our fast first thing in the morning with a bowl of cereal or a really high sugar coffee creamer that might taste delicious, but would knock us out of the fasted state right away. So that's why it was incredibly important for us not to use any sugar in the product and anything that would compromise our fast. And so, this MCT product is fantastic to take in the mornings, and will effectively keep you in a fasted state for a prolonged period of time, and in fact be helpful to in your fast also, in that it is satiating and energizing, and basically helps you not think about food when you're not actually thinking about it, or when you're not actually having it.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I'm really curious about kind of that fasting piece, because it's something I don't think I've ever really talked too much in my podcast about. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you started? Again, I'm thinking, you're so young, and you're already experimenting with fasting, and again, intermittent fasting, I think maybe is a little bit more common nowadays, but can you tell us a bit more about your journey of what kind of experiences you had with this, and how that also helped you realize that might also help you with performance enhancement or your well-being?
Yeah, sure thing. So, again, it's fairly timely, because there's sort of an explosion of research and public information about fasting over the last few years, and so we've sort of grown up into this culture where this is one of the tools in the toolkit. And so, many of the people that talk about supplements and talking about exercise and resistance training, longevity broadly, also do, look into the research on both calorie restriction and intermittent fasting. And so, I guess for me personally, my first experience with this was I actually had a friend that was quite interested in life stacks, and he told me to look at MCT, and he also told me, he wanted somebody to fast with, and so we kind of just launched into like a 3-day fast just right off the bat. And I definitely wouldn't recommend that. I think it's wise to ease into something like that. But it was an interesting experience, and one of the first things I noticed was that there was significant psychological effects of a fast. So on that very first evening, I felt like I was very sharp, very energized. I didn't sleep very much that night, and then woke up the next morning feeling very sharp and energized. I keep track of my heart rates, and typically I'm looking for like a low heart rate of like a nighttime low heart rate of say 40 beats per minute. And I noticed that first night I got down to like 35 or 34 at the low. And basically that's a signal to me that my cardiovascular system is operating at peak functionality. So yeah, that's sort of the first my first foray into fasting. But over time, it's sort of evolved into just a really lovely consumption structure for me. It's a way to basically keep consumption under control, but without feeling like I'm restricting. And the more you feel like you have to exert effort to maintain a set of habits, the less energy you're going to have for other aspects of your life, and the harder it's going to be to sustain that particular piece. And so I love that fasting is something I can do that doesn't really cost me that kind of willpower. And in fact, it even makes me feel healthier and more energized each day.
Mm-hmm. Vincent, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was an interesting discovery for me, fasting, because I grew up in a household where I wasn't allowed to go to school unless I had a huge breakfast first thing in the morning. And so when I discovered that I could actually skip breakfast, it was like I found a superpower really within me, that it wasn't actually necessary to have food right away first thing in the morning. There's a couple of other things I want to say about this. Zack and I aren't interested in fads. We're really interested in what nutrition and fitness regimens that match really well with the kind of bodies that we inherited from evolution. And fasting is one of those things. When you woke up 30,000 years ago and you didn't have a bowl of cereal first thing in the morning, you had to operate really well and make really good decisions in a food deprived state. So our bodies are actually well suited for fasting because it's an evolutionary benefit that we've benefited from over millennia. So I think it's something that's very deeply ingrained in our evolutionary past. I guess in a more modern context, I would say the following. Zack and I feel strongly that fasting isn't about feeling deprived. So it is a physiological stressor on the body, right? It's a hormetic stressor. And especially when you live a sort of high activity lifestyle, you go to work in the morning, you have a long to-do list, you have lots of meetings. It's fairly inconvenient to feel deprived or hangry or sluggish from not eating. And that's kind of where we wanted to intervene with our MCT product also. The MCT is a fantastic way to stay energized and satiated even when you're in a fasted state. Because fasting in a modern context means being your best self and feeling really strong even when you're not eating.
Yeah, really interesting. I'm actually doing a course at the moment with a brain-based leadership institute on a course on psychological safety and trust. But long story short, there's like a really big introduction about the brain and about how the brain works. And they actually address that. So it's really funny that you just said it, because it kind of rang a bell and made that connection for me again, because I actually read about that too, that I think after 15 or 16 hours of not eating, there's actually something that's kicking in the brain that makes you even more performant. What I didn't read, and what I'm not sure if you know, that is how long can you actually sustain on that level without needing anything, right? Where you feel like kind of the boost and the energy versus, the opposite of like the energy depletion and the sluggishness and the tiredness.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think it's going to be very person by person. You tend to hear with like longer fasts that people will feel very good, and then they'll feel somewhat depleted on day 2 or day 3. Then they'll pop back out into an excellent feeling. And but of course, it again, does depend on your physiological circumstances going in. If you're not very fat adapted in the first place, meaning if you're not very good at using endogenous fat stores for energy, and so you're always basically you're always taking in, say, carbs from outside and using that as a fuel substrate, then you may not actually have what you need in place to feel very good fasting. So it's something I'd say you really do want to layer on. You want to ease in and think about how to basically support your body in feeling optimal if you're going to try these longer fasts. But I mean, in terms of like how long a person can be in a high performing state while fasting, I think it's it might be surprising how long we can actually go without food and be functioning pretty well. But that's not a recommendation, of course.
Exactly.
And you would need to have body fat, significant body fat, in order to last for a very long time while fasting.
Julia, if I could add one thing here, the way we think about fasting isn't in a sort of highly regimented fashion. So, people are familiar with 24-hour fasts, 16 and 8 and things like that. And it can feel like, unless you actually make it the whole time, you're missing out on benefits, etc. And, I think while it's a good thing to go as long as, sort of you feel good about, we think of fasting as a much more intuitive thing. So it is, as I already said, a hormetic stressor. And when, you have the hardest workout of your, training block, or when you didn't catch enough sleep, or when there's other like big stressors on your body, then it might not be a good idea to go for a 24-hour fast or even a 16-hour fast. So we try to be a lot more flexible with it and a lot more intuitive with it, while having as an overarching goal to keep our bodies in a fasted state as long as we can, and then get out of it. But as I said, vary that according to all the other environmental factors that are going on in your life.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're mentioning that, Vincent. Yeah, that's super, super important. And so where is your product available? Is that already somewhere in the stores or mostly online at the moment?
We're mostly an online focused business, just so we can, reach the widest audience without needing sort of the permission of some, retail buyer arbitrarily. And, one thing about that whole space, distribution of physical products, it often helps people to tell a story to a retail buyer about, who's using the product and sort of like scope that you have and, traction online. And so as an early business, we're using the online channels to lay foundation and basically accumulate a story. And then that's going to let us be selective about the retail channels that we go into. So that's where we're starting. We have a website up right now that we've worked hard to to communicate basically how we understand all the stuff and why we're doing what we're doing. And we're also launching Amazon pretty soon. And that's a channel that we actually tested a first version of this product in, and it went really well. People really loved the product, and the response was great. So we're going back to Amazon and hoping to really hit it out of the park there.
Yeah,
the website
cool.
is lifestacks.com. Thanks.
So the product that you just showed in the camera and in the video was a chocolate flavor. Is there any other flavors?
Yes, we have vanilla and hazelnut as well.
Very cool. And what are the other products that you're working on?
Sure. So, as Vincent mentioned, we are designing products that are generally useful for people that want to be in a high performance state. And we are serious about making fasting friendly products also, stuff that's going to, not disrupt the fast and even support it, because that's just how we live our lives. And we think there's a real opportunity to use supplements to make fasting easier and even more effective. So in that vein, we've been looking at other things that people have when they're fasting, and electrolytes are pretty much the most popular solution for a fast. It's our bodies are, as we're fasting, we're utilizing the glycogen stores, meaning the glucose that we have stored in the body as an energy source. And that's going to actually lead us to end up depleting ourselves of water also, because glycogen it keeps a lot of water around. And so electrolytes are basically a way to keep your blood volume higher and make sure your blood pressure doesn't go too low as you're doing longer fasts. And so they also support things like fasted workouts for that reason. If you had nothing at all, you might notice that you could be lightheaded doing intense exercise. But if you have electrolytes, that can support effective workouts while fasting. So the next product we'll bring to market is an electrolyte product that's enhanced with a set of adaptogens and nootropics, basically to support energy levels and exercise while fasting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm sitting here drinking my electrolyte, my electrolyte water. And what I also find really interesting is this is maybe the 8th or 10th podcast interview that I recorded this year. And we're only obviously in February and I haven't published all of them yet. However, I think this is the 3rd time in these just 8 or 10 interviews that were all super, like, not at all, health maybe related in terms of like supplemental companies that mentioned the importance of electrolytes. So I'm really happy to see and also hear that there's more and more emphasis on electrolytes, because I do really believe in the power of electrolytes and how much they can support you, especially if you are a very high stress, employee or entrepreneur, and you're looking almost for like a quick fix or like an easy way to support yourself, or an easy way to kind of get started with all the supplementation and supporting your healthy lifestyle things.
Yeah, absolutely. Electrolytes are, especially for fasted lifestyle, that's something that is super helpful to have in the mix. We also we encourage people to look at multivitamins and omega-3s, and even fiber supplementation, perhaps magnesium, vitamin D3, zinc. So there's a whole list of things that people are starting to include in their health regimen that are broadly supportive of a high performance life. And so, at LifeSnacks, we're just trying to bring more delicious and convenient options that pack a punch and support overall functioning.
Yeah.
There's one metaphor that's coming to mind, and this actually might be helpful for clarifying how we think about nutrients and fasting, sort of more broadly. Let's say let's analogize the body to a house, for example. You basically the house is its physical existence is made of stuff. So you have to bring in those things that are, and anytime there's damage or there's wear and tear, you have to keep doing maintenance, which means to continue to bring in materials that are needed for that house. It's got to be furnished with the right stuff. The analogy here is that the body is made of materials, and those materials need to be replenished. And so that's not only vitamins and minerals and macronutrients, but also electrolytes, which are basically keeping blood volume high and enabling the nervous system to function adequately. So you want to make sure you've got those flows of materials, to support the functions that you have. Now, fasting sounds fairly antithetical to that mission. And of course, if you were to fast all the time and never eat, then it would be antithetical. You would not be able to actually maintain the structure that is our bodies. But there's another operation that you have to maintain in a house, which is to make sure that waste byproducts don't accumulate. So you need a way of taking out the trash and flushing the toilet, so to speak. And the body has that mechanism inbuilt as well. So you mentioned 15 to 16 hours into a fast, a mechanism starts to kick in. And that I think you're referring to autophagy and also ketosis. So basically taking, for autophagy, taking senescent material, so cells that are kind of worn out, and then recycling those materials, sort of cleaning up that tissue. And then in the case of ketosis, it's taking the fat stores that we have in the body and using them as a clean fuel substrate. And so in both these cases, the body has a mechanism basically for keeping things smooth and clean and basically getting rid of crap that's accumulating. And, basically we feel that in this overnourished sort of excessive intake society that many of us are witnessing and living in, we're not really emphasizing that clearing quite enough. So fasting is a way to counterbalance some of the excessive intake that we're getting used to now. But it's really got to be both these things. So we're very serious that you have to, as you're introducing fasting as a great way to keep your body healthy and fit, you also have to be very serious about taking in the proper nutrients.
Putting in the right things, yeah. And talking about ingredients, I'm actually curious for you to share a little bit more what is in the creamer.
Yeah, for sure. So we mentioned MCT. MCT is a ketogenic fat. It basically is rapidly absorbed and rapidly used as a fat-burning fuel substrate. And so, and we use just 6 grams of MCT, 45 calories. And so basically, if there's maybe some people that would wonder, if you can have calories at all when you're fasting. And the answer is that certain calories actually do support the pathways associated with fasting, such as fat burning. And with that few calories, you're not going to be displacing the body's own usage of an internal fuel source for very long. So if you go for a half-mile walk, you've already burned 50 calories. And I'm sure, we're all doing that just by going about our daily business. So that's the first ingredient. We love it for the texture, flavor, and functional properties. And then we have taurine. Taurine's used in conjunction with caffeine pretty often because it really smooths the effects of caffeine. We use a modest dose of that. It's conditionally essential. So you need some taurine from your diet, and your body also produces it itself. And it helps to regulate the nervous system. The next is tyrosine. Tyrosine is the amino acid that is used to create dopamine and the other catecholamine neurotransmitters, so epinephrine and norepinephrine. And basically what that means is it's providing the raw materials that you need to target long-term goals and be persistent in your pursuit of those. So we mentioned Adderall already. Adderall causes the release of dopamine so that you have that drive that you're looking for, but it ends up depleting your stores of those essential neurotransmitters. Tyrosine actually is a replenisher of those neurotransmitters. So you end up basically having this motivational states, but without sort of compromising your long-term ability to be motivated and driven. The next is GS-15-4 ginseng. Sorry, that's a mouthful. It's a really high quality patented ginseng extract. And we use that one because it's much more effective than typical ginseng. And it also doesn't taste like terribly bitter like most ginsengs do. So it actually goes well in coffee.
Mhm.
Now I'll flag there, that's our most expensive ingredient. And if we were just some normal company that wanted to quickly sell products and make a quick buck, we wouldn't use it. We're using it because we're the consumer, our families are the consumer. We want to provide stuff that really makes people feel good in the long-term way. So we're willing to compromise our margin for that. The next is acetylcholine. So acetylcholine is a precursor to the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which is the learning neurotransmitter. And so this particular ingredient has been studied for mitigating cognitive decline in elderly populations. As it happens, having choline in the diet is very useful for keeping the brain healthy because it's one of those building blocks. And acetylcholine also has an acute effect of making you feel sharper. And we use a monosose that. Next is rhodiola rosea. This is an adaptogenic herb. It was initially found in Siberia, and basically the healthful compounds in the rhodiola are, so the rosavins and the solidosides specifically, are actually part of the plant's defense system. So they're the way in which the rhodiola plant is able to resist the cold temperatures and withstand those circumstances. And then our bodies actually can take those sort of plant defense compounds and use them for our own health defenses. And so it's
cool.
It's thought to be somewhat of a hormetic stressor as well. So it's something that is training our bodies to become more resilient. We use uridine monophosphate, which is it's actually a nucleotide base, but specifically it's part of your cell membranes. And so the safety of uridine is well established, but most of the reason for using it is actually the anecdotal fervor of the nootropics community for uridine. So it's been experimented with quite a bit. It's part of a very popular stack called Mr. Happy Stack that's sort of popular online. And it's also used in many of the pre-formulated nootropics that are on the market. And that's really because it's just basically anecdotally been found to be quite helpful for alertness and energy levels and clarity. And there's some thoughts as to the mechanism behind that. So it's not just it's not snake oil. It's something we're learning more about. And then finally, there's huperzine, and huperzine stops the breakdown of acetylcholine. So just in the same way that you can have tyrosine, which supplies dopamine, and then Wellbutrin, which stops the recycling of dopamine, so keeps the dopamine active and alive. You can have it's the same applies to the acetylcholine system, where you can provide donors like acetylcholine, and then you can block the breakdown of that acetylcholine that's produced. And so the net effect is a sort of synergy across those two ingredients, acetylcholine and huperzine, that leads to higher levels of circulating acetylcholine. And so that basically has a wakefulness and clarity effect as well. I'll flag one more thing. I know I've been going on a long time with this formulation here, but with all these ingredients, we're dosing very modestly. We don't want to overwhelm our physiology with things that are going to push us into states that we want. We want to support the physiology holistically. And for us, that means basically using a minimum effective dose for these different compounds and getting a more holistic and synergistic performance benefit.
Yeah, it sounds like a miracle product. So does it mean that people that are listening and taking and drinking this product will never have to take breaks again in order to support their physiology and psychology?
Sure. People will still have to take breaks for sure, but we have been hearing from our customers that that afternoon crash that's so typical with their usual coffee has gone away. So by supporting the brain in this way, we're getting closer to the peak capacity that actually is within all of us. So I think this doesn't turn you into it's not a limitless pill or MCT or whatever that is. But it does help quite a bit, and you might be surprised by how much you can get done and how good you can feel when you support the body holistically like this.
Vincent, do you have anything to add?
Oh no, I think that
that explains it.
It's Zack and I, as Zack already said, we're careful with our formulating, and we don't want to overpower and overwhelm the systems that we're targeting. And so people are not going to feel, like Superman, but they're going to feel like they're having a great day on it.
Yeah. It sounds so, complicated. Like I'm, as a business owner myself, and having a physical product on Amazon, which is a planner, nothing in compare, like not a supplement or anything. I'm thinking, what is that process like to like test all of these different things, right? Like to decide, is it a powder, is it a capsule? Like, I don't know, it must be such a long process. And I'm sure also the American regulations of creating products that you ingest are probably pretty strict as well.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we can go through the process a little bit. It was pretty extensive. So, the first thing I'd say is that we're in a privileged position of being able to look at all these different products in the market that use these ingredients in various combinations. So it's like, the Wild West has already been explored and staked out and mapped to some extent. And so you can look at all these basically results that you can use to inform your own thinking about which supplements to take. So that's the first thing. We're always operating within the bounds that are already established by the industry, because we're not trying to take risks with our health. We really want to do things that are supportive and not harmful. Now, in terms of so we started with the capsule, and that let us use ingredients that may not taste very good or may not dissolve very well, because you're not tasting or mixing. And then as we looked at food-like applications, then we needed to be more stringent with what we're using. So we took our list of 500 ingredients that we're interested in and tested the flavor and solubility of each of those. And so that gave us a subset of ingredients that we could work with within the coffee creamer context. Fortunately, we didn't have to reinvent the wheel as well. There are energy drinks and energy shots and things of the sort where people are using nootropic ingredients in a soluble way that you're going to consume. And so that gives us some sense. So I'm thinking in particular of taurine, tyrosine, choline. We already knew that those would be appropriate in a consumption format like this. And then, just extensive experimentation. And I think you're right. It's a complicated business, but a lot of good practices are already fairly well established. So when we talk about dopamine, acetylcholine, and then taurine for the sort of calming GABAergic effects, those are already thought to be basically the key systems that you would look to impact in making a nootropic formulation. And so, I guess that this, as I said, the territory has already been fairly well mapped. And so it's just a matter of being a really, really good steward of that map as you're creating a product like this.
And then there are just production companies in the US that help you produce, the things that you are coming up with.
Yeah, for sure. And we look for manufacturers that use good manufacturing practices certified by the FDA. And then also that are NSF, which is the basically sports certification in the US, which is even more stringent than what the FDA is looking for. And so, that way we're very comfortable with our partners, and our customers can be too. But yeah, there's a
I have so much respect for you. Yeah.
Well, Julie, I think one thing that I'll say on this is that even though Zack and I are still fairly young, we've been at this for quite a long time now. And so there's been an extensive learning period. And I think the reason why we're so excited about showing the world, this product now is because I think that there's been a lot of knowledge and trial and error that's accumulated over a number of years. And now we can really step into the market with a product that we can fully stand behind and be really proud of, and really believe that it's beneficial to people. So, from the inside, it's felt like a pretty long process as well, and it has been, but I think it's been worth it all along. And because I think that the product that process has yielded is something that we can really be proud of, and that we want our consumers to be excited about as well.
Yeah, totally. And since this is an international podcast, do you ship internationally as well?
We don't yet.
Okay.
But it's certainly something that we'd love to do in the future. Yeah.
And I think with Amazon, you can just ship internationally. I know with my planner, my sister in Germany just tried to order one and she did, and she received it like a week later, which was obviously there's like significant shipping costs involved, but I sent her a planner as well, like just via the post office, and it was almost the same cost. So it is pretty expensive, but it's possible. Just something for you to keep in mind. The wise living philosophy, what does that mean for you?
Interesting. So I guess here's what I'd say about this. What is even the point? What are we here to do? The mandate or the sort of that's coming from within to some extent. So the cosmos doesn't provide us direction. It's something that we sort of have intuitions around and feelings around, and other people have feelings for us about what we're supposed to do. And so, I think basically for us, it's about understanding really what those motivations are in the deepest possible way. So really, what is a good life? What actually is value in the first place? And then it's about assessing the resources that we have that we have at our disposal and that we can deploy for achieving those ends. So I know this is a quite high level sort of summary of wise living, but I could break it down a little bit. There's a bunch of requirements that we have to fulfill to have healthy lives, and then on top of that, there's the possibility of meaning and having really engaging experiences and having a useful participation in the world. So sort of the top level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, essentially. And but those things aren't free. They are actually hard won. And so by basically setting your sights on these difficult things, understanding that they're not for free, and that there's a lot of pieces that have to be put properly into place in order to have these really engaging experiences in a repeatable way. That it imposes fairly difficult criteria, but I think we've also got a lot of time. Life is short and life is long. Also, I've heard Frank Wilczek in the book Fundamentals say he estimated we have about 2 billion thoughts in our lifetime. That's a lot. That's a lot of material.
That's a lot of thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for us, wise living is some combination of really seizing the open-ended opportunities before us, but also recognizing the patience that's required to go after those opportunities.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, this was such a pleasure. So interesting and so inspiring to hear your story about how you started this product and how amazing this product is. I'm very excited to test it out as well. And for the people that are listening now and that are curious, Vincent already mentioned it. I'm going to mention it again. Lifestacks.com is the website where you can find all of the information. I'll make sure to add that to the show notes as well. And if you're listening to this podcast episode and you found this information super helpful and inspiring, feel free to share this podcast episode with your friends and with your family and with your coworkers, because this is really how you can support Zack and Vincent, and then obviously also me as your podcast host, in order to just spread the word and give people more information and education about the things that are available to them today. I'm especially thinking, of clients that are still on Adderall, maybe even in their 30s and 40s, right? And they think that that's the only way to go. And I think it's really inspiring and motivating to hear there's more natural ways to support yourself without, actually depleting your body and harming your body. So keep that in mind. Again, Zack and Vincent, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for creating this beautiful product. I'm super excited about the electrolyte, and I'll talk to you maybe the next time when you bring the electrolyte on the market.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Julia.
This was great, Julia. Thank you very much.